Welcome to the AMT Tech Trends Podcast, where we discuss the latest manufacturing technology research and news. Today's episode is sponsored by IMTS Plus, and I am the Director of Technology, Benjamin Moses, and I'm here with
the technology analyst, Stephen Lamarca.
Steve. Welcome to 23.
Thanks, Ben. Welcome to 23.
It's the first couple of days back for work for me. I've been off for a while. Feels like ages.
I think you've been doing everything right.
Thanks.
You know, we all needed that break. Those of us who got a break, I'm very thankful that we got a break.
Yep.
But we were just saying in the last episode that feels like a year ago now, that if 2023 is just as good as 2022 was, but slowed down, we're good. And I think you're off to a perfect start.
I think we're starting off well. A lot of emails were backed up, but it's all good. It's
yeah.
expected.
Oh my goodness. Was there a lot of email in my? All right. I'll be honest with you. I don't get a lot of emails.
Sure.
I'd like to think it's because I have good rules and stuff in my Outlook, but when I got back into the, I told myself over the break, I'm not going to check my email at all, and I was good. I was true to that. I didn't.
Yeah.
Actually, I checked once because I did want to see if, spoiler alert, Fruit Corps got back to me, and they did, but I didn't read it.
Okay.
And I didn't respond to it until I was back in the office. But when I get back in the office, it's something, and this is probably light for a lot of people, but my inbox said like 76 unread. That's a lot for me.
That's a fair amount. So, kicking off this year, we want to talk about, you have an update on Blackstone?
Oh, yeah.
Remember
for the past 3 episodes, I've been blabbing about how I finally sent an oil sample after the last 30,000 miles, and I've been really paranoid that I'm about to blow my engine.
Yep.
Blackstone got back to me. They went over the sample. They said, yeah, some levels of iron and whatnot are elevated, but that's to be expected.
Okay.
In the averages for this engine. You're still below average in terms of things that aren't supposed to be in your oil compared to other of the same type of engines for this model car.
That's the best news to be told you're below average.
This is the best time to be told you're below average. And it's great. It just means I can stop worrying.
Good.
I've got some 2023 could bring me another track day or two. It's just good news.
I'm going to mention a side note, since we talk about car stuff. I've been waiting for a new windshield for about 1.5 months now.
You told me about this.
Supply chain issues, man. So we've been, Safelight's been trying to get an aftermarket one. It's missing a rain sensor, so they have to get one from the dealership. And
wait a minute, the rain sensor is in the windshield.
The cutout for the rain sensor.
Gotcha.
They can't rub it away or they can't scrape it. Whatever, it's fine.
The German engineering.
So I've been failing inspection for the past few months.
Oh wow!
So I just let it be. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, but that's for the few months.
Yeah,
they don't. Fine. They only check once a year.
Yeah.
A few months don't matter.
It's gonna go. I need them to get the windshield.
Yeah.
I need to call Porsche and ask them where my windshield. That's what I need to do.
It's a Porsche.
Also, we mentioned that we're headed to a nice team building event, and it's kind of related to some travel we got coming up. We had a great time at the gun range.
We had a great time at the gun range. With Tim.
New experience. I've never been to this kind of gun range
before.
This
gun range was awesome. When you have a lane, you have a lane. I did watch a video of that place before we went. Good. And apparently there's even better, more bougie and luxurious lanes than that. You can rent out an entire, party lane.
Wow.
Which has 2 lanes.
Okay.
And, a party area behind the 2 lanes while people are shooting with a coffee table and couches.
Wow.
So you can, change. Everybody has to wear ear pro while back there and probably eye protection as well. But there's a kitchenette, which, frankly doesn't really make sense to me too much because if you just got done shooting and you want to tend to the brats or whatever you have, it's you got to wash that lead off of your hands. But I'm not the designer. It's none of my business. I don't have enough money to rent that lane.
There's a lot of lead in that lane.
But I will say, it was very inspiring. Maybe inspiring is the wrong word, but it made me want to get back to going to the range more regularly.
Yeah.
So this year for Christmas, I asked for a bunch of ammunition. I got it, dude.
Nice.
I got 1,000 rounds of 223 5.56 for Christmas.
Hopefully not the green tips, so you can actually shoot in.
Lead core. Believe me, I specified and Santa delivered.
Good. Good. And I think you bought a loader also to help you load
That's
your
for my
magazines.
birthday. That's on the way.
That's coming up. Okay,
My
cool.
fiance got that for me. She's the best.
It's fun because it's a premium range. They have a bunch of other stuff. They have like a restaurant. They have like a knife lounge. Is that what it's called?
The Knife Nook.
Knife Nook.
This place is called XCal, by the way.
Some high-end knives and then some generic knives. But it was interesting. And the lane that we had, Tim was nice enough to rent it for our team building event. So it's
sick.
I would say it's like a 50-yard range, but it's a single range where it's got cinder block walls along the entire length of it, so you're completely separated from the lane next to you.
Yeah, like sound dampened.
But they had sound dampening too. I was like...
You could not hear the lane next to you.
I expected your rifle to be louder than it was, but no, because of all the sound dampening material that was down the length of it.
By the way, your AR chambered in 9mm made the weirdest sound.
It sounds weird, doesn't it?
Downrange. It sounded like a laser gun. I thought we were in Star Wars. Like, that scene where they're in the hall and all of the rebels are shooting at the smoke that Darth Vader's in. I was expecting to see a saber come through that smoke at any moment.
When you shoot pistol calibers through 16-inch barrels, they all make a weird sound.
Fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you shoot like a 22 long range or a 9mm, I want to get a 45 upper, but that's impossible. So, Steve, you want to tell us about our sponsor today?
Our sponsor today is IMTS Plus, the people behind technology, the stories driving the future of manufacturing, the thought leaders and people like us creating the products, the opportunities, and solving the challenges of our industry. Explore a new digital destination designed for the manufacturing technology community where you can watch, read, learn, join, and connect. Go to imts.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. So you mentioned FruitCore earlier, and I think it's time to talk about FruitCore and testbed updates.
So over the break, I checked my email like I said I wouldn't, but it was only for the one. I got an email back from the sales representative at FruitCore Robotics, German company, German robot arm company. They're new. They're inexpensive. Naturally, being that, our organization does not exactly have the deepest pockets for a manufacturing technology budget. We're not making parts.
We have a test bed.
We're not making parts. We want to simulate. We want to not simulate. We want to make a replica of a manufacturing cell in our office, where legally you can't make a manufacturing cell. But that's besides the point. We're not making parts. It's totally legal. We're just doing experiments. So they get back to me and they're like, "We are excited and pleased that you are showing interest in our robot arm.
Yep.
But we're focusing on the German and European markets currently.
That's interesting.
And we're not ready to extend our support to North America just yet."
Oh, interesting.
They worded it much more friendly than that. But basically, it sounded like they were a little afraid of some being able to supply us with replacement parts should we need them.
Sure.
Number one. Number two, I think they wanted to be careful around some of the regulations in manufacturing in the U.S., which I respect. But at the same time, it killed me. I was like, come on. Of course I jinxed us in the last episode. I said, we're going to get a robot. We're going to get this FruitCore robot. And the next thing you know, you can't have our robot. I learned the lesson, Ben.
Yeah.
You're always trying to teach me things, and I'm never listening to you. And he said, Steve, maybe you shouldn't talk about test bed stuff until you actually do it. And you know what? You're right. I see it now.
Now you see
it. Now I announced something on the podcast before we actually wrote a check or anything like that, and they're telling us, no, you're not getting it.
Can't do it.
So here I am backpedaling. First episode of 2023. We're not getting the robot we said we were going to get.
Backpedaling, Steve.
At least backpedaling. Great.
It's unfortunate, but I think it kind of conveys the sea of equipment at this price level, at this pro-consumer level.
True.
It is very difficult. Even getting the X-Arm a couple of years ago, that was right at the end of a Kickstarter, and it took us a really long time to actually get the physical equipment. 2022,
2023, we're trying to prove it's not just China or bust.
Right.
And now they're kind of like, China's just sitting there smiling, we'll take a check any moment now.
And to be fair, so they do have equipment. I think their concerns is, like you mentioned, exporting from Germany and then importing into the U.S. and all the support behind it. And that's a fair problem statement is, can they support us And I think they're looking broader. They probably have received several inquiries from the U.S. and probably looking at, how do I support? Do they need a distribution center? Do they have to ship directly from Germany to the U.S. for all of their support needs? And that's not the best idea, right? So
right. No, it's not.
I definitely agree with their uncertainty.
I mean, we're just talking about your issues, your woes of trying to get a windshield from Germany. So
exactly,
this is all foreshadowing.
All foreshadowing.
So maybe.
So we got to press reset on the research.
Got to press reset. The good news is maybe good news. I'm not going to jinx myself again, but Doug asked me, because apparently, Doug came up to me and was like, "Oh, tell me about the horsed robot we're getting."
Nice.
I was like, "Well, it turns out we're not getting it, Doug. I'm sorry." And
can you go buy one and bring it in your luggage?
Send me to Germany and I'll do it.
This is getting a little more expensive, but interesting.
Just the flight is going to be the cost, our budget for the test bed. But I'm telling Doug about this, and Greg Jones, who sits very close to me, of course, he's overhearing this, and he's like, "Steve, last year we were able to get a Chicago school a Universal Robots arm for one of their shop class."
Right.
So I think we can pull this off because Universal Robots is really happy with us right now.
Sure.
And I think they would be willing to get us something. And I'm like, well, it is, it's an off year for IMTS. So it's not like we'd have to, they're scrambling to get everything ready for the show. So this might happen. And I say that because I think IMTS 2018, the beginning of 2018, we were trying to get our first robot. That's how far back it was when we planned to get the X-Arm or a robot in general. And I was talking with Fanuc, Doug and Tim, and I think Doug and Tim reached out to Mike Chico. Mike Chico set me up with the right people to talk to get us a robot. And then it was nearing the end of the summer in 2018, which means, a couple months a month plus before IMTS 2018, and I stopped hearing from Fanuc.
Right.
And Tim was like, "Stop reaching out to them. They're all hands on deck getting ready for IMTS.
Right.
Just wait. It's a next year thing."
Yeah.
And I took that to you, and they were like, "We're going China." But we don't want that to happen again.
Right.
So
I think for us to,
and it might be the year to strike with a member or potential member company in industry.
Maybe we can debate this a little bit more because I do see value in actually trying to buy a piece of equipment to see what that entire infrastructure looks like. So maybe instead of an arm this year, maybe we'll look at some metrology equipment.
Right.
So
right. And Greg was saying they would likely even though they wouldn't charge us, they'd likely give us the robot under with the agreement that one of us, me most likely, takes the class on how to use it, and we assure Universal Robots that I will teach other people how to use it.
That's fair.
That's their agreement for giving away a robot. And to be fair, that was the same agreement that Fanuc had.
Right.
It's just the timing didn't work out. There's nothing against Fanuc.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, but maybe we'll just stick to metrology.
I think it's time to pivot. Speaking of which, we've been talking about our time at the gun range, and we're getting back into industry research. And you and I have been talking about shifting our research into technology events and shows to end-use shows.
End-use shows, absolutely. The fun show. Not that industry shows aren't fun, but the beauty of this industry is anybody can work in this industry and get really excited about it. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but you can get I find it really easy to get excited about the manufacturing technology because it fuels all of my passions.
Right.
One of those being firearms. I'm going to SHOT Show next week.
That's right. So who do you have lined up that you're trying to stop by and take a look at their booths?
First one I want to go see is the first one that I named. I don't necessarily chronologically want to see them first. Maybe Daniel Defense. And the main reason for that is they are a primary sponsor of the American Precision Museum.
Oh, cool.
My favorite trip, my favorite guest visit in season 1 of Road Tripping with Steve.
Yeah.
American Precision Museum, heavily supported by Daniel Defense.
Cool.
I want to show them the recognition that their investment in the American Precision Museum is paying off. Want to meet them, talk shop with them, want to find out what machine tools they use and what their workflow looks like, what their manufacturing workflow, what some of the pains. Just talk shop with them.
Right.
Another one is LMT, Lewis Machine Tool. Got to talk to them just because of their name alone. They have machine tool in their name. Yeah. They are, in fact, a gun company. But what's cool about this gun company is a lot of other major gun companies actually have contract job shops to make specific parts for them, if not entire parts for them. They usually go to hire a manufacturing facility. It's kind of like the watch industry, not a lot of stuff, at least it used to be, is made in-house by that company. The Switzerland rules have changed with watchmaking, so now all of the watch companies now have to make their stuff in-house with their own equipment and artisans. And gun companies can be like that, or they can outsource.
Sure.
Usually outsource locally, close to them. Almost all American-made guns are, if not made by that company in their own facility, are made by another American company within a few states from them. And LMT is one of those companies that makes parts for a lot of companies, and specifically government-contracted manufacturers.
Yep.
Colt. A lot of the parts in like the Colt M16s and Colt M4s are actually made by LMT, especially like the safety selector switches and whatnot.
That's why the Colts are so expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Because they don't make anything on their own.
And then there's a third one that is getting into high volume additive.
High volume additive. So SIG, a company that used to be Swiss German.
Yep.
I mean, there still are Swiss German. I'm sure they still have a few facilities over there.
Yeah.
But they were like, the biggest buyers of firearms in the world is the US of A, baby. Maybe we should open up shop over there. And they did. And they came over here, and lo and behold, they've got several government contracts, U.S. military contracts. One of those happened last year in 2022, was the adoption of the XM5, the Next Gen Service Rifle. I think that's what it's called. And the Next Gen Service Rifle, the XM5, and once it's fully adopted, will become the M5. That weapon system is not just a rifle, but it's also a fancy optic made by Vortex, and maybe I'll go see them too. But
sure.
I'd like to see. I know some of the guys and girls from Strategic Analytics, the other department at AMT, has one of the other departments at AMT has visited Leopold in the past,
That's
and
cool.
Apparently they have a lot of index machines.
Yeah.
I really want to know what kind of machines a lot of these companies use.
Definitely.
The big thing about the M5 weapon system is that it comes standard. Like every weapon, every service, every American warfighter that gets an M5 will also get a suppressor as a part of that, a silencer as a part of that weapon system. Fully 3D printed out of Inconel.
Right.
And this is for two reasons: a tactical reason, or a I think the word that they like to use in the military is a force multiplier reason, and a hearing protection reason.
Right.
And the human side of that is, if you look at any American veteran, any U.S. well, if you take all of the U.S. veterans, the biggest disability that they have coming out of service is hearing loss.
That's right.
And by giving every warfighter a suppressor, we could suppress hearing loss.
That's a good pun. I appreciate that.
It could, but by spending a ton of money on Inconel suppressors for every single warfighter, we could save even more tons of money by not having to pay their disability.
And the best
That sounded really bad.
The best example that I've remember is in Black Hawk Down. There was a scene where one of the soldiers had to basically shoot very close to
Yes.
the ears of another person, and the other person, I think his name was Twombly. Twombly was basically deaf the entire rest of the mission.
Right.
And that shows you the impact and how loud fire. If you haven't shot firearms,
dude,
it's very loud.
That's a good point. Well, yeah, they are really loud. Movies and video games, especially video games, do not convey how loud guns are.
Yep.
Like people, there's a term in shooting called double plugging.
I do that.
Everybody should do that. Like if you care about your ear, that's putting earplugs in, that stuff that goes in your ear that makes you deaf, and then putting earmuffs over that. That's double plug, being sure that you can't hear anything. You're protecting your ears. And yeah, Hollywood video games do not convey how loud guns are.
No.
And it's cool that they're doing this, especially considering that the new M5's cartridge that it's going to be using is at like 80,000 psi. And for reference, the current military cartridge is between 58 to 61,000 psi.
Yep.
That's a whole, almost a 20% increase on pressure. Naturally, that pressure is going to be converted to sound somehow. And that's a whole lot faster way to burn out your eardrums.
Definitely. See, so I'm looking forward to talking about it on the podcast, and we'll see what written content we're able to produce from there.
I'm at least going to make one article about it.
Let's get into some articles.
Yes.
I've got one from supply chain and demand executive.com. And they talk about the technology trends to watch out for in 23. And the reason I like this
this is fun.
It gets back to supply chain, which is going to be abysmal for a long time.
Don't buy German.
Or don't.
That's mean. I'm sorry.
And they talk about more the digital side of manufacturing. Basically, how do you manage the supply chain as a whole, right? Every manufacturer is part of a supply chain. So how do you kind of manage that? And they hit on a lot of digital stuff. Manufacturers will ramp up digital initiatives to track next-gen workers, which I thought was kind of interesting. That's the first thing that they're leading with is, they're already talking about trying to track the next generation of workforce and the technologies that they can attract them with. Cloud adoption will unlock access to analytics and drive smarter decision-making to support manufacturers, which we've been talking about that for a long time. So instead of leveraging, on-machine or, analytics, and in general, analytics have moved from on-site or on local machines to cloud-based. My friend who's doing work for finite element analysis work, they've shifted to a lot more cloud-based analysis just because they can harvest, larger and larger machines. They can harvest, more CPUs. So it's very interesting that they're definitely approaching that. And obviously with supply chain, if you're managing that type of stuff, managing several suppliers and as an OEM, you're going to do a lot more cloud-based analytics in general. The third note that they may make note of is increased cloud adoption means increased security risks, which that makes a lot of sense since, even our own IS infrastructure here, we're shifting from on-premise equipment to cloud-based systems because we do have a remote workforce, and that is the trend across the entire board for all platforms, is to have more cloud-based solutions. Even just raw data storage, having on-prem stuff, it's kind of dicey to have a large amount of on-prem stuff with a remote workforce. So now that you're in the cloud, the threat vectors and threat surface area is different. So that needs to be accounted for. And as you go through the migration process, the risks change. I wouldn't say the severity of the risks change. It's the type of risks I think change. So I think that kind of evolves in your migration plan. And I like the last one also is inflation will drive manufacturers to focus on visibility for better forecasting.
Let's hope.
Let's hope.
That sounds great, but put your money where your mouth is.
Especially those industries that are purely commercial or consumer driven. We briefly talked about this early, the GPU shortages early in the pandemic. Where we're trying to figure out what caused the GPU shortages, and a lot of people are blaming crypto mining. When realistically, just the demand was outrageously spiked.
Right. So I feel like we did blame crypto mining.
Right.
Number one, and maybe there's something to read from all of that. Mm-hmm. Crypto is tanking.
Yep.
Crypto's tanking. Well, first off, let's inflation's at an all-time high.
Yeah.
And we saw this. We kind of got a taste of this, even though we may not have realized it, because these new GPUs, the RTX 30 series by NVIDIA, was coming out, and they were being advertised by their leather jacket-clad CEO, saying that these are going to be the cheapest GPUs of all time. Our 3070 is going to be $450 or whatever they said. Next thing you know, a blink of an eye happens later. they're being flipped on eBay for like $1,600, and that's a good price.
Right.
Well, that was a good price.
Yeah.
That's like inflation now. Like right now, inflation's crazy high.
Right.
But in the midst of this inflation being crazy high, GPUs are now available.
Yep.
And they are dirt cheap.
It's come back down.
Like right now is if you're a gamer, right now is the time to buy a new GPU.
It's fair.
So hopefully this is a sign of the future to come.
Right. And I think coupled with that, I've been working with our automation committee and kind of learning about their struggles. And they've been facing shortage on fairly basic stuff like cables, connectors, things like that. And I think getting into better forecasting. So in the end, it's basically inventory management.
Yeah.
Getting back to the concept of trying to get stuff just in time or being able to deliver the final good. And we talked about, that integrators having struggles because of certain components. They can't deliver the full assembly to their customer, and they can't get the revenue from that because they're waiting on a few connectors. So there's a whole entire ecosystem of problems that are occurring because of shortages. And I think the idea of being able to improve our forecasting capability will help at least set expectations a lot more.
Absolutely.
Steve, you've got one on life-changing technologies.
Forbes has an article on the 5 life-changing technologies that you might not understand. And while you were talking, I was doing a good job at active listening, and I should have been queuing up this article to be ready to roll.
Now, the title is very, very impactful, so I'm hoping we'll see.
The title is impactful. I thought the article, I mean, it's Forbes.
Sure.
So I feel like the article was long-winded and had basically the 5 technologies. 4 of them you likely already know.
Okay.
And the 5th one I didn't know. I hope you know. But anyway, these 4 life-changing technologies that are changing our lives, life-changing, but we don't understand. Artificial intelligence,
sure,
100% changing my life.
Yes.
Do I understand how it works? Like exactly the code that goes into making AI?
Right.
No, I'm not a coder. Maybe Alka can tell me what goes into coding something that's AI. Nina definitely can. You're right.
But I think
not to discredit Alka.
I think the basic principles. I think that there's layers to that question that I think you're kind of alluding to, right? The most tactical level, as in actually creating an algorithm. Very few people understand that. But the concept of you take a model or you take a data set and you train an algorithm that's based on that.
Right. You don't write the algorithm. You train the algorithm. Like what?
And then you get an output that you feed in variables, and then it generates the output. So that infrastructure, that there's a training set, and how big that training set and the quality of that defines the quality of your AI and things like that. And that occurs for, vision, that includes for natural language process. That whole process is the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people miss that.
I think what was missed about that is that AI's been they've been talking about AI, not just bots in a video game,
right,
but actual the AI that we're talking about today was started a couple years ago. But just like an actual intelligence, a real intelligence, it had to grow up. It had to develop before it could be marketed.
Yeah.
It actually, OpenAI, what we used for text generation and summarizing, that was not always good.
Right.
But it had to be trained, and it had to be trained through use.
Exactly. And that's where I think that's the convergence of 2 areas. One, the volume of training models that are available, and also the ease of implementation. Both of those come together this past couple of years, where it's not super easy, but the ability to at least try things and get to a useful model has come a long way.
Right. The next life-changing technology that we probably don't understand. I can safely say I do understand, but it's not life-changing yet. Okay. It will be. It absolutely will be. Quantum computing. Quantum computing, not life-changing yet.
Not yet.
It will be. It will turn everything that we know about cyber privacy on its head, and will totally erase the term privacy, at least from the internet, as we know it.
Right. So
it's terrifying.
You're looking at
if you have nothing to hide, don't worry about it.
You're looking at so quantum computing allows basically faster Faster CPUs, faster.
It's not just faster CPUs. Like a fast CPU
Faster
can
calculations.
do one calculation, then do another
Right.
A faster CPU can do those calculations rapidly.
Right.
Do calculation. Quantum computing can do sequential calculations in parallel.
Right.
Can do calculations that need to be done in order. It's like, no, I don't. And just lines them up, calculates them all at once.
Right. So it's a paradigm shift of basically just, that's what CPUs and GPUs do anyway. They're just running through mathematical models.
So like where today a powerful computer, like a supercomputer, like something with 1 million cores or whatever you have, can not jailbreak. What's the term? Brute force a password in like a couple hours, depending on how complex it is. More or less hours, depending on the complexity of the password. It'll brute force a password in that much time because it has to run so many sequential calculations. Quantum computer can run all of those necessary calculations, regardless of the number of characters and unique characters a password is, all at once, and can get it done maybe in a couple minutes or less.
And so the reason I went down that path is your first use case is
breaking into computers.
Never mind, enhancing artificial intelligence processing for like cancer or what's the one we're doing with protein analysis?
Oh, protein folding.
Never mind any of those nice applications.
Forget that stuff.
Let's get right into security.
Get your money out of the bank now, because that number in your bank account on the phone doesn't mean anything. Put it under your bed now. And please don't do that.
What's the next one?
Maybe buy gold. The next one, forget this one. Okay. I really want to use foul language right now, but metaverse next.
Right, let's move on.
5G.
5G.
We're seeing a lot changing in 5G.
Sure.
All of this calculation that I'm doing in my hand is being done a lot faster because of 5G.
Yeah, you think so?
And then the last one, I know nothing about. I don't even know how this is affecting. What is Web3, Ben?
Web3.
What does that mean?
Okay. It's another way.
Maybe I should have read the article.
Nah, you're not missing much. It's another way to increment like technology phases for something massive.
And this is for the internet.
This is for the internet.
So there's like Web 3, Industry 4.0 is like Web 3.0.
Right. So the first iteration, 1.0 was
dial-up.
Massive adoption of the internet. Right.
Yeah.
So they've gone from DARPA experiments, from sending hello to now we can buy an AOL subscription. Right. So that's 1.0.
1.0 was like, some DARPA in the 60s was like, dude, I just sent a message to Ben. He's on another floor on the other side of the building. It's like, what does this mean?
Yeah, exactly. So that's 1.0. When we get to the shift to 2.0, that's basically more of the creator movement. That's individual contributing towards their own content online. So that's a broader phase from, stuff being stored online to basically where we are today. And you take that back about 10 years or so to basically everything on YouTube, everything on Instagram, everything is user-generated content being put out to the world. So that's kind of 2.0 is that.
Gotcha.
The first iteration is basically infrastructure.
Wow, we're only on 2.0.
We just talked about 3.0 is the life-changing thing.
Oh, okay. We're about to find out.
So 3.0 is, okay, so right now, like the entire infrastructure is, you have a server somewhere, all your data is on that server. So you could have, one whole website on, in this physical server building, maybe in a couple of racks or something like that. It's probably spread over that entire server area. Where 3.0 wants to get to is taking decentralization across the entire board. So instead of taking, one set of servers for a single host or stuff like that, it's hosted over larger platforms or across different areas. Security is decentralized. Taking some of the crypto mining tools into decentralizing that stuff. So that's where 3.0 is headed, is more underlying technology to help spread the load across more area.
That's fascinating. Do you think...
You won't notice a change.
Not in my lifetime, maybe. But do you think someday the same thing that happened to Detroit in the auto industry could happen to like the server farms in Loudoun, and they could just be like empty and like rotting?
No.
Because people will take over and live there.
Right. So you're still going to need a drive somewhere to hold data. So this is taking maybe instead of having the capabilities and tools to decentralize within a building, you didn't decentralize across several buildings. I mean, some of that already exists, but it's expanding that further and all the underlying tools to support that decentralization. So it's basically back to like torrents.
Yeah.
It's a very similar application where
I'm thinking more like quantum entanglement.
Right. So,
but with data.
Actually, Steam is actually looking towards this process also as being able to, instead of hosting all their game data on their servers, if you want to download something and if you agree to that, people can download bits of that game from your file, from your computer also. So reducing the load from the server to decentralizing to people's computer.
Steam was thinking about like playing with that years ago though, right? Are they actually making moves to do that now? Maybe not Steam.
Testing.
Maybe it was somebody else.
Probably someone else.
I've heard of this before.
Yeah. It's been around for a while.
This is cool.
It's been around for
very,
a while.
very cool.
Are we all done with the life-changing
All
stuff?
right, Forbes, not bad. Not bad. You're off the hook.
It's a good summary of a Forbes article. The one I have is trends to look out for in 23 since the beginning of the year. This is from automation.com, and they're talking about the top intelligent automation trends. So it's taking AI and turning it backwards and talking about intelligent automation. So it's not saying all the decision-making is going to be done on the floor. It's looking how do we implement automation in a meaningful way. So I'm not going to cover all 10 because it does cover like stuff on software development, but there's some really interesting ideas here. One is the concept of RPA, robot process automation, and it's related. It's somewhat related to the previous idea on cloud adoption and AI. So in a lot of cases, the software, automating software tools. So imagine Excel, you're having to copy and paste or do a lot of edits continuously, repeatedly. You can build in a macro to do all that stuff. Take that concept and expand that across like several different platforms, right? So robot process automation allows you to basically automate stuff, software applications. And that's the kind of idea that they're looking at is not just physical automation, but extending the physical automation concepts to software. And that's where I was trying to connect it back to is the supply chain side of, if you're constantly running analytics, running tools, pushing a button and having to digest data, being able to automate a lot of that processes. The other one that I thought was interesting, they talk about generative AI, which,
that sounds redundant.
It does sound redundant, but I'm still looking for use cases that are talked about. So I hear, we've been talking about generative AI for a long time. We understand the basic principles about it, but I don't see enough. And it could be just that not a lot of people are talking about it, but I struggle to see a lot of use cases coming out and a lot of people talking about it, or in the designs that we see being generated.
The only use case that I can see about like generative AI that's being used like actually used, and not just being used, but crushing it, is Quest Tech.
Sure.
They're killing it with like their specialty alloys.
Yep. So
they don't get enough credit.
Yep. And then going back to, let's see. Oh, this is the one I wanted to hit on, and because we've been using this a little bit, rising adoption of natural language processing technology and conversational AI. So this has been a hot topic in a lot of the news feeds for the past about 6 months or so. I think it's GPT-3 that's pushing out a lot of the conversational AI tools. So when you interact, so the analogy is, say a couple of years ago, if you went to a website, a chatbot popped up and said, "Hey, how can I help you?"
Yeah.
This is taking that 10 times more, where the dialogue and the semantics and the conversation is significantly more human-like and able to solve problems and get to solutions.
And not instead of like press 1 for sales.
Right, exactly.
Press 2 for customer service. Like instead, it actually like asks you what your problem is.
Yeah.
Not like that, but like asks you what your problem is, and it's like, and it takes those words out, figures out what it means, and then sends you down the right path, assuming you told it everything it needs to know, without like going through all of the press 1.
The first use case we talked about was, I think it was NVIDIA or maybe one of the other GPU companies was developing text to image. So you write in a text of what you want the image to look like, and then boom, the image appears. So if you said, I want a cat drinking a milk out of a bowl with a tree behind it, it would try and generate that image. I don't think it would actually, try and look for that image. That's just what a Google image search would do. It would actually create that image from scratch. Where we are right now is text to 3D models. So you type in what you want the 3D model to look like, and that 3D model will be generated. And that's fairly simple model, fairly nascent technology, but the parallel is very similar where we're looking at 2D images, now we're expanding to 3D. So it's a very interesting path that we've seen. The last one I want to hit on is, that's the last one I'll hit on, is faster adoption of intelligent automation in small to medium-sized businesses.
Right.
We've been talking about the automation journey for a long time and the barriers for implementation. Now that costs have come down significantly, and we've been experimenting with test beds, getting super inexpensive equipment, stuff that you can't actually buy and get imported to the U.S., being able to figure that out. So I think one thing that small to medium-sized businesses will need help with is they're still in, we'll call it low volume, high mix parts. So they have a lot of different part numbers that they're running through, right? They're probably not running the same million times of one part number. So being able to switch between unique shapes, unique part numbers, and we're seeing a lot more standardization on end-of-arm tooling to help support that. So there's a big convergence of barriers that small to medium-sized companies have had that are being broken down recently the past couple of years. So that is, I definitely agree with a lot of their thoughts on trends to look out for in 23. And, as we get into IMTS for 24, we'll probably see a lot more interesting use cases that allow for more flexible part numbers through their manufacturing floor. So thanks, automation.
Thank you so much. And there's a few more. That article has a big list of.
They do. Yep, they've got.
We just went over the top.
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot of it does apply to like software dev and that type of stuff, because they are talking about both physical and software automation. So
that's a good article.
Check them out.
I definitely want to read that all the way.
Steve, let me know what your thoughts on 3D printing.
Design for 3D printing. Okay, I'm going to pull a fast one on you and be like, and tell you that I don't want to talk about this article anymore.
Oh, no.
Because I read the article a little bit further.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be a nice article about design for 3D printing.
Sure.
And the author of said article makes it sound a little bit more like they're crying about how additive isn't being adopted as fast as it should be, because people want parts that don't make sense for additive manufacturing. And it's just like, this sounds like a cry fest.
Yeah.
And
it's a problem, though. I mean,
I get that.
Right.
But
that's not what we need right now.
We don't need that right now. It's too early in the year.
Yeah.
Let me come back to this after I give this article a better read through. And it some honor.
And we just talked about mass additive and suppressors.
Yeah, we did. And we're going to even further with a good article. And we've ran long for our first episode of the year anyway. So I think we've got a good amount of content.
I think you should tell people where to find more info about us.
They can find more info about us on amtonline.org/resources.
Thanks, Steve.
I'm not going to say like, share, and subscribe because I don't know if they can like it.
Welcome
they can share it, and you can subscribe to my newsletter.
That's solid. Bye, everyone.
We got to put a like button on there. Bye.